He doesn't like it when people make money. Who are crypto bros? That's me. I like to get out and actually do things and push crypto forward, because I can't say enough how impressive Magnus was with what you said. You get it. He's one of the only people who I've ever talked to that actually get what's happening here. I don't think you understand the speed that things are happening at right now. He does. He pointed out, Decentraland, crappy metaverse, awful. You can learn some stuff from it, right? They're using it. They're learning, working with the government. And so we moved in as well with working with the government on the state and federal level. And since then, what I've learned a little bit more about the way that the American government works, and I don't think it's actually that much different than the way a lot of governments work. They're bloated. It's too big. It's bureaucratic. Politicians only try to do things that help their next campaign. They don't actually do things to help. This is very dangerous with where we're at right now. The United States government is falling so far behind. I think a lot of them think we're going to be able to catch up, which is still possible at this moment. It's not going to be in the future. You have to realize how fast technology is advancing. That crappy metaverse Decentraland, wait about 4 years to see what it looks like. It's going to be drastically different, or it's going to be replaced by something that is dramatically better, right? Metaverse is coming. NFTs are going to continue to be big. They're going to become, take more and more forms. When we look at the amount of people that are coming in and the amount of coins and exchanges that are being created, I was told by everybody and their brother that when we went through this last bear market, we would see a total collapse of altcoins, which definition is anything other than Bitcoin. We see a total collapse, and we would see coins, funerals for coins everywhere. And I told people, I don't know if that's true. The number of coins when we started the bear market on CoinMarketCap, the number one most visited site in all of crypto, where they track crypto analytics and crypto stats, trading stats, things like that. On CoinMarketCap, there were barely over 20,000 coins. I was told it would go down to less than 100. You guys know how many is on it today?
Over 30,000?
It's 23,000. Now, CoinGecko might show more. CoinMarketCap has about 23. We've had 3,000 additional coins, and there are hundreds of thousands of coins out there. It's only going to continue to get more and more and bigger and faster. And we've got a problem where we have the speed of government, which is extremely slow. It's already being outpaced by technology growth. It's about to go parabolic. It's about to be exponential to the point where governments are not going to be able to catch up. Like you were saying, we don't want to worry about a DAO or NFTs right now. Like, that's crazy. We got to focus on crypto trading, but yet Bitcoin's been around since 2009, white paper since 2008. We don't have definitions of blockchain or crypto assets. That's terrifying. That's terrifying for business. That's terrifying for innovation. And that should shake governments to their core, because it's only going to get worse. You can't sit on your hands and say, well, we're just going to ignore this. America was able to enter the race much later than everybody else, and they were able to win, and they were able to become the leader, in space exploration at that point. I believe the United States government has the same kind of attitude when it's coming to crypto. Right now, the banks, our main regulator, Gary Gensler, literally was an employee of Goldman Sachs, the biggest, most evil bank in the world, for at least one of them. And so all of the regulation right now is slighted towards the banks. They're trying to hold on to the traditional system as long as they possibly can, but it's slipping through their fingers. Once that hits, a point of no return where the system is changing. I mean, you guys see what's happening with the banks in America, right? Like, they're all collapsing right now. But at some point, that's going to change, and the crypto system is going to be taken over. That's not an opinion or a theory. It's literally financial and technological evolution. It's a better system, and all of the parties in the world that have been built up as brokers, right? That's what a bank is. A bank is a broker. They're an in-between. They're a middleman for you and a good or a service, right? All around the world, we've got services like the banking system that's set up for third parties to be able to come in and, like a leech, suck money off of everybody without doing anything. That's going to be over. Blockchain fixes that. Crypto fixes that. Bitcoin fixes that. Eventually, common sense wins out and the superior system wins. So my encouragement is, while the United States is still acting like, this heavy bureaucracy, and they're trying to hold on to the system as long as they can to try to make sure in the future they're able to catch up with smart regulation, there's a lot of opportunity for other countries right now to step up and become a leader in crypto. So my point is this. They operate a lot like the traditional system. Those are the type of people we don't want in crypto. That's a crypto exchange that operates like a bank. That really doesn't have anything to do with cryptocurrency specifically. But what I think is very important is, when it comes to the regulation of these platforms, what we really need to see is clarity in the terms of service where people are signing up. And the terms of service, is based on regulation, right? And I'll explain briefly what that means. It's based on regulation, and the companies are held responsible for that. So if someone signs up for a site and the terms of service says, we are going to take your crypto and we're going to leverage it, and if we make money with it, you get a return, and people sign off on that, then that might be okay. But at FTX, that didn't say that. That was not the terms of service. The Celsius terms of service kind of did say that, once you give us your assets, they're ours. We need to have clarity when it comes to whose assets are whose when they're sitting on an exchange where somebody else owns the private keys. If that was in the terms of service of FTX, exactly what they were doing, then it really would have been on the customers for signing that terms of service. There's no regulation on the terms of service. We need to make it to where people who are putting money on a third-party exchange, that part of those terms of services is, even though it's on the exchange, the user still owns those funds. That's why everybody's screwed right now, who lost all the money, because it became the exchange's funds. That's crazy. I think talking about FTX US specifically, when it comes to Gary Gensler, SEC commissioner, there's no one in the United States who has hurt investors more and cost more people money than Gary Gensler. He hasn't done his job. His entire job is regulation, and he hasn't done literally zero. And he outright says, oh, well, the regulation was done back in 1933. It painted with a broad brush. Obviously, computers weren't created. His hairline may have been created back then, but he certainly may have been around. But most of us weren't around in 1933. Byron Donalds, who's my favorite congressman, he actually talked about this in a hearing, and he said to Gary Gensler, they painted with a broad brush in 1933 because they were just getting started. By 2023, 90 years later, we should be able to have some clarity and be more specific about this stuff. Digital assets were not in the brain of anyone who was creating the regulation back then. Because Gary Gensler has refused to do clarity or provide clarity and regulation, this has pushed companies offshore, like to the Bahamas. I noticed that on your presentation earlier, you were talking about minimum capital requirements. The Bahamas had minimum capital requirements. With FTX, they literally chose to, I'm sure it was a bribe, they chose to ignore it. They didn't have minimum capital requirements for FTX. Why? Because FTX didn't actually have the money. Obviously, we know now, right? So they got pushed offshore to a government that they could run over and they could bribe and they could get advantage from. Whereas if the United States had the regulation, even if it was somewhat tough, they at least have guidelines to go by. It's the lack of clarity. And this is why I'm saying it's so terrifying. This is why it's terrifying. The lack of clarity, the lack of regulation, this is what causes the collapse. The governments are causing the collapses. the United States government, led by Gary Gensler, is exactly why FTX collapsed. It was not held to the same standard that everything else is, that is, in the United States. You always have some companies that want to do stuff offshore. That's okay. But most Americans are not going to be able to use those platforms unless they, go around what's allowed. Use VPNs, use someone else's passport, whatever it might be. So most Americans are actually protected. Once again, lines of what I was telling you guys earlier, care about your citizens, protect your citizens, but don't be a wolf in sheep's clothing and pretend you care and talk about you care, but actually be working in the background against the crypto companies and against your own citizens, because that's what the United States is doing. I think we're going to see probably major changes, in the government in terms of elections in the next 2 years because the ball's been dropped so badly.